Hello there, I'm Lady Loy, and I'm writing a book called Everything You Wanted to Know About Blackness But Never was Afraid to Ask. Anyway, I'm on Lovers Rock Radio on a Friday, 7 till 9, and on Gold Standard Radio on a Saturday, 7 till 9. But I'm not here to talk about the radio, I'm here to talk about blackness. And in this particular case, it's why black people should feel proud of themselves. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. There's a question that sits quietly beneath a lot of conversations, even when it isn't spoken out loud. It's not shouted, it's not always angry, and it doesn't always come dressed as politics or protest. Sometimes it arrives as a sigh at the end of a long day. Sometimes it's there when you look in the mirror a moment too long. Sometimes it's there when you achieve something meaningful and still feel an ache you can't name. It's the question of pride, not the loud kind, not the performative kind, but the deep, settled kind that lets a person stand comfortably inside themselves. For black people, pride has often been framed as something that must be justified, earned twice, defended constantly, explained patiently, and that alone tells us something has gone wrong, because pride was never meant to be a courtroom judgment. Pride was meant to be home. What if pride isn't something black people need to build from scratch, but something that has been interrupted, something inherited, passed down quietly, encoded in posture, rhythm, humour, survival instincts, tenderness, creativity, and spiritual depth. Something that didn't disappear, but learned how to hide when hiding was necessary. If that's true, then feeling prouder isn't about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you already are. So much of the world has trained black identity to orbit pain. History lessons that begin with chains, news cycles that end with sirens, conversations that flatten an entire people into struggle alone. And while struggle is real and must be told truthfully, it is not the full story. Pride grows when history is allowed to be complete, when brilliance is not treated as an exception, when joy is not seen as denial, when rest is not mistaken for weakness. There is a pride in knowing that black history did not start at its breaking point. There were systems, sciences, philosophies, spiritual technologies, art forms, governance, and beauty long before disruption arrived. Pride deepens when ancestry is remembered, not only for what it survived, but for what it created. When lineage is not reduced to wounds, but expanded to wisdom. But pride is not only historical, it's daily, it is intimate. It shows up how a person speaks to themselves when no one is listening. It shows up in boundaries, in choosing peace over explanation, in deciding that exhaustion is not moral failure, in refusing to audition for dignity. One of the quiet truths rarely spoken is that pride can be delayed by the constant demand to be strong. Strength has been celebrated so loudly that softness has had nowhere to land. Yet pride does not grow well in a body that has never been allowed to rest. There is pride in tenderness, pride in saying, "This hurt me," without apology. Pride in choosing healing even when it makes others uncomfortable. Another truth that doesn't trend well is that pride doesn't require universal approval. Waiting to be understood by people invested in misunderstanding. Waiting to be understood by people invested in misunderstanding you is a slow erosion of the soul. Sometimes pride strengthens the moment that chase ends, when a person decides gently and firmly that their worth is not a group project. Representation matters, of course it does. Seeing black excellence reflected back can be life-giving, but representation alone cannot carry the full weight of pride, because pride that depends entirely on visibility is fragile. The deeper, more durable pride grows in places that cameras never reach, in private decisions, inner alignment, cultural continuity, and self-trust. There is also an unusual doorway into pride that many avoid because it feels dangerous at first. Grief, real grief. The grief of what was stolen, delayed, distorted, mocked, or denied. Pride often waits on the other side of that honesty, because once grief is allowed to speak, something shifts. The shame that never belonged to black people in the first place begins to loosen its grip. And in that release, pride doesn't need to shout, it simply stands. Pride doesn't always feel like celebration. Sometimes it can feel like calm. Sometimes it feels like clarity. Sometimes it feels like choosing yourself without announcing it. Sometimes it feels like laughter that survived impossible odds. And sometimes it feels like refusing to shrink, even quietly. And maybe the most radical thing of all is this: pride does not have to look the same for everyone. There is a pride in activism, a pride in art, a pride in family, a pride in solitude. There is a pride in faith, a pride in questioning, a pride in building, a pride in simply being. No single expression gets to be the standard. Black pride is not arrogance, it's not exclusion, it is not denial of pain. It is the refusal to internalize lies. It is the decision to tell the full story. It is dignity reclaimed from places it should never have been taken. And when pride grows this way, quietly, truthfully, inwardly, it becomes unshakable, because it is no longer asking permission to exist. It simply does. And that kind of pride doesn't change how others see black people. It changes how black people experience themselves. And that, more than anything else, is where the real power has always lived. And I hope you found that enlightening, inspiring almost. That's all for now. Bye-bye.